Rob, you had other questions you wanted to?
We'll wait for that. With regards to your projections of tonnage, I know one of the things you're planning on using the funds and the financing for is improving equipment to achieve greater productivity. In the past, I know there were some issues about making modernizations and improvements, and it didn't exactly achieve what was intended. In this particular one, as you take the financing and do those modernizations and improvements, are there going to be performance guarantees and warranties, if you will, from the contractors and engineers to put them on the hook for the tonnage they promised to achieve from the modernizations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the company's responsibility to make sure that it's procuring exactly what it needs and specifying exactly what it needs. It's certainly the supplier's responsibility to adhere to that. So contractually, yes, we would expect that, you know, any supplier, whether it's equipment or frankly raw materials, because we are dependent on good quality fiber and chemicals. So really any material or equipment that requires specifications to be met, we would expect that there's a performance guarantee related.
Okay, so the specs, I mean, generically, the spec is the output and the quality of paper. And I'm very common with penalties being levied if you don't achieve certain things that the engineer or the contractor are being hired for. So that's kind of what you envision to work with reputable firms and achieve those outputs. Obviously, there's special chemistry and knowledge that your team has that an engineer is not going to, but just want to make sure that there's some penalty, unlike I think before there were modernizations made and it was sort of like, well, it didn't work, let's try again. I mean, I know I'm minimizing what really happened, but that's generically what happened.
It is, and yes, just to be clear though, we will absolutely specify what the equipment, measurements, design, the specifications for the equipment itself. The equipment supplier cannot be held to the output of, either productivity or conformance to our customer specification. They can be held certainly to what they're supplying to us.
Okay.
And we would hold them to that.
I'm satisfied with that.
Along those lines, one question I have is, as Carthy Specialty Paper, I mean, you're special, we've had a hard time, we've had losses dealing with paper companies in a global market. What are your strengths to avoid the pitfalls of that global scenario? I mean, is it your output side? Are your risks mitigated on the input side from global competition? How does your company find advantages in that kind of an environment that's going to make you special, more special?
Well, I'm going to have Michael talk in a second about kind of our niche markets and customers and a little bit about kind of the demand side of the equation. I would say that from the input side or the cost input side of things, I think we enjoy a very good relationship with our union. And if the management team is successful in buying the assets of the business, we would certainly seek to maintain that relationship and enter into a new contract, but along the same terms that we have now. So we certainly don't want an adversarial relationship, and we look at our employees as a very important asset to our company. They're experienced, they're dedicated, they know paper. So, that doesn't mean that, every paper company wouldn't say the same thing, but we do, enjoy a good relationship there. We just talked a little bit about, natural gas and electricity. That's another significant cost input in the paper industry. We've secured very solid agreements at very competitive rates on that cost input. And then we have in development a couple of relationships from a strategic standpoint to procure fiber, the other significant raw material to paper. But so we feel very good about our cost inputs. We've also adjusted our overhead structure, so we're running lean, but not too lean. But I think the real differentiating factor for Carthage is its customers and its markets, and we are in some niches that provide us some protection. And I think Michael, who's really been with the company the longest, and is our vice president of sales and knows the customers and the markets better than anyone can speak to this best.
Yeah, I think the thing that differentiates us, I don't even think I know, it's very clear. While the rest of the paperboard industry went to commoditization, we went the other direction. And had we gone that route, we wouldn't be struggling today. So, our approach is we make products that our customers want to buy instead of expecting them to work with a limited offering like the others do. So because of that, we're the only mill in the world that manufactures the wide range of products that we do. We have competitors with all our products, but none of them do all the grades from very thin to very thick, into all the different packaging applications, to the material that we discussed before has had some chemistry issues. It's a microbiological standard that there's not another mill in the world doing it from recycled fiber. And that's the key for us. We are a recycler. We have a story to tell. We do something that other mills just don't do, or they're not willing to do. And because of that, we have the most unique group of customers out there. Some of our products that in this room, the matted picture frame, we do the core that is actually bevel cut. We export that around the world. There's only one or two other mills in the world that manufacture and produce that, and they're not doing it from the raw material that we are, that are sustainable and recyclable. So we have a very unique story.
Yeah, two-part question. You mentioned unions. Somewhere in here I thought I read you have an existing union contract that expires. I thought I read 19 or 20, but the second part is, well, the first question was, you mentioned renegotiating the contract, and I thought I read that it's already good through X. The second part of the question was, with all the modernizations, do you expect the employment numbers at your facility to sort of maintain or slightly increase or slightly decrease?
So the company is in bankruptcy and intends to go through this 363 auction process. If the management team is successful, it will form a new company. Because the union contract is between Carthage Specialty Paperboard and the United Steelworkers, a new contract needs to be created because it would be a different party to that contract. It would still be the United Steelworkers, but it would be a new entity that the management team would form. So when I say renegotiate a contract, it mainly is a change in the party. We intend, and we've actually had employee meetings this week. In fact, we were at the facility at 6 this morning on shift change to talk to one of our shifts about what's going on with the company, to keep them informed, and expressed exactly what I just did with you, with them, which is, we look at the employees as one of the critical assets of the business. We have no desire to create some sort of adversarial relationship. Quite the contrary. We want the full support and dedication of that workforce. So we would like to essentially adopt what we have with a few modifications. I think the union would like to see a few modifications to the agreement, but the spirit of cooperation and it is there. So, yes, the current contract runs through for another 4 years approximately. And we would hope that if we're the successful bidder, that we'd have the opportunity to essentially adopt the existing contract with some minor modified. I forgot.
Employment levels, up, down, or status
So-
quo?
So we, right now, there's 76 employees. We would expect to at least maintain that. I don't see a decrease in the number of employees. I do see a possibility of some slight increases.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question on regarding your customer base. Is your product or your business where you are a primary or a sole supplier to those businesses, or are you secondary to? Is it
Well,
business?
We have several that we are exclusive.
Sole supplier.
Exclusive sole supplier.
So with your, along that, my concern with that, it can be a great positive thing for you, but it can also really kind of bite you in the butt. Should part of that management team, that cooperative management team, what's the duration of that? Is that a 5-year, you guys have to stay together for a certain amount of time? If you're sole supplier, can he get an offer from the outside and take your customer list with him and get lured away out of the management group? Is that, do you have non-compete clauses and?
Well, we haven't even formed the entity yet. So
Okay.
what we have to show first is that we're financed properly, which is why we're here. If we have that, then that meets the requirements of both, the senior lender as well as the court, and we're successful, then we would form the entity, and in our partnership agreement, I don't want to speak for Michael or Don, but we absolutely would want to ensure that our roles stay the same and that we're committed to seeing this through. That's really never come up, and it would be very difficult, as Michael described earlier. It would be very difficult because our products are very unique. They're not, you can't just move them from, let's say our mill to another mill without some significant risk and disruption potentially to the customer. So even if somebody could take a customer, in name, it would be very difficult for that paperboard to be supplied from a different mill.
Other questions?
Kind of internal to this board, but just a generic statement. This was in front of the loan review committee, but it came in very late, like 3 p.m. the night before our meeting. So what we did was we moved to have the discussion here in front of the full board.
Sure.
I just wanted to bring that out. It was in the minutes of the loan review committee, and we didn't really bring that up.
So Dave, where are we going from here? What's our,
Well, I guess it's for the board, if you want to approve the loan request, the matter of the motion, you vote to do so. Or discussion.
Was there,
Or to not do so.
there wasn't a resolution,
There's-
right? There was
we
just
do
a
not have
loan
a-
application?
Yeah.
Right, there's no resolution.
Yeah, we don't
a
need
resolution?
Just this application that we received. And I guess to further say to add, when we moved to push it to the full board, we moved with no recommendation and only discussion and action taken by the full board. So the loan review committee was very silent, we moved the packet along.
Because we didn't have,
Expediency.
because of the timing of the bankruptcy and everything else, there wasn't time to wait for the next loan review committee to actually take time to review it and make a recommendation for the next board meeting in May.
So the due diligence by Lyle and you says this is a worthy project?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you're based on the number of
I
we've
think
seen.
saving 77, 80 jobs, whatever it is, this is a small gamble in my opinion.
Well, I would move that we authorize the loan, understanding that we only have to make the loan provided they're the successful bidder coming out of bankruptcy.
Right, that'll be a contingency in the commitment.
I'll second that.
And for the record, we're identifying a loan of $250,000 from the IDA RLF fund, correct?
8 years, 6% interest.
Whatever the board,
Well, that's what I wrote down, that's what we discussed at the loan review committee. That was on the,
yeah, that would
That's what-
mirror some proposed
yeah,
interest rates from another
okay.
lender. We've gone 5% consistently, we can go 6 if that's the board's.
Well, I just, again, we offered no recommendation at the loan review committee, but that's what I had written down, so we need to know term and interest
I
rate.
would recommend we go with 5.
Our standard.
It's the-
Can you modify my motion with the terms, David?
Yes, would you please?
I'll move the modifications explained by Lyle.
And the
What's
loan
the
would
term?
be coterminous.
Coterminous.
with
Okay,
any bank loan.
coterminous.
Same length of time,
Yes.
Collateral, guarantees.
All of the above. Anything you can get.
Guarantees and second, third, fifth position,
Whatever, on the assets of the new corporation.
Well, probably actually second.
Yeah. All that should be in the approved motion.
And I don't want to assign work to Mr. Russell, but I would recommend that council do this commitment letter.
Sure.
Rather than doing it in-house.
I agree. So we have a loan, we have a motion modification. Do you have a second? to
Yeah,
his
I would
motion?
still second the modified motion.
Any other discussion? On the proposed loan, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. So we'll get a letter to you. Okay, thank you.
Can,
Good luck.
I would ask that staff get that resolution put together and get it out to all the board members so that we have everything in.
The reality is, if it comes to us having to make that loan, it's because that's the only option on the table. And what, for 70 jobs, I gotta do it. It looks to me like they have the personal finances to cover that, so.
Any other unfinished business, Dave?
No.
I guess we've already been through that, haven't we? It's my understanding we've received prints from.
Yep. Yeah, you all received in the package a copy of the plans for the, well, I don't know, do you want to start with the overall covenant discussion or with the first two? Where do you want to start?
I'm not sure.
I think we're gonna,
That was the discussion on having, how we move forward with our new parks and covenants.
Yes.
And whether we contact the owners of the current park to discuss modifying covenants. I don't think we're in a position now to have that discussion or ready to.
I agree.
So it's probably premature to have that on
Okay.
there. And unless the rest of the board wants to, but I think it's premature to have that, because we still have the airport park, we have the new ag park.
Yep.
And I think we have to have a thought process on all three parks, on how we deal with covenants.
Right. So first two, you've got copies of plans, but there's also a larger copy here on the easel over there if you need to see it.
Okay.
Maybe you want to start with an overview from Mike on the project, or maybe you want to start with any questions the board might have?
I think, Counselor, we have a,
Yeah,
Mike, give us an overview. Counselor, you lead this for us, please?
yeah, absolutely. You've received correspondence and comments from the public concerning opposition to the proposal. And they center on claims that the proposal violates the covenants in the park. Any owner in the park can enforce the covenants. The agency is not obligated to. And the agency is not even obligated to take a stand as to whether proposed use is consistent with the covenants or violates it. The covenants do require a developer to provide you with plans for the structure which they have done. And if you choose to review the plans for the structure, you can do that. The covenants give you the authority to disapprove it. I read it as no affirmative obligation to approve or disapprove. But it might be appropriate for you to at least review the structure, the plans for the structure, and render a determination on that. It's not a site plan review, that's not your purview, it's just a review of the structure as the covenants are written, so. So with that said, you might want to have Mike outline what his plans for the structure are.
Mike, would you like to come up and give us an overview of?
Dave, do you have the building elevations on here?
Yeah, they're right behind you.
Okay, so the building that is shown on this site plan shows an anticipated future bay. The building as submitted and approved by the planning board, and we have the zoning permit from the planning board, is 80 by 60. They would like to add one more bay to it. So the site plan showing here is 80 by 80, and that would be a detail bay. The building, you don't have the elevations.
I think those are the two things you gave me.
You've got them in your package.
They've got it in the packet, though, yeah.
In your package is the building elevations, of what the building looks like. And it's almost a mirror image of what you see next door. At Penske, it's similar to what I've built for Car Freshener in their manufacturing facility, as well as the other public buildings that we've done in the park. We go back to the 70s of building in the park. My father built Stature Electric early on in the 70s. I've done 12 projects in the park since the mid-1980s. This is honestly the first time that I've ever submitted a project and come before the board on a project unless it was something involved with a pilot or any of those type of approvals. From the layout of the structure sits just off the front setbacks, and again, there's a discrepancy between the covenants and restrictions and the setbacks that the town zoning has. We can comply with either one. Parking is to the side of the building. All the bus parking is in the rear, and it's screened by a 6-foot-high vinyl fence that is landscaped. There's also screening along the front of the building. From an operations point of view, it's being called a garage. The reality is it's a training facility for the drivers. It's also an inspection facility for the buses. There is no major service that's done in the building. They have to go through routine inspections on the buses. Major service is shipped out to service providers, other places. We believe it does meet the covenants that the First Student is providing a service into the community, and professional services is allowable in the covenants. From a traffic point of view, and that seems to be what a few people are hung up on, and we had this discussion with the planning board, not only with this project, but the FedEx project and a couple of spec buildings that we looked at on lots 10 and 11. When the west driveway at 202 was installed, that really changed the dynamics of traffic flow in the park. And that benefits this project, it benefits FedEx, and we're looking at another project on lot 10 that would also be trucking entity, and it would benefit them. First Students employees come between 5 and 6 in the morning. They have 50 parking spaces, but only 43 buses. Those buses leave between 6 and 6:30, and they go out the west driveway. So they go down by the fire department, out to 202's intersection, and then back up. There is a significant distance between the traffic light and the driveway to the fire department for staging of buses, so you're not going to have any interference with buses backed up. And you're really taking 40 buses out over a period of 45 to 50 minutes. The buses come back in mid-morning, go back out again mid-afternoon, come back in 4 to 6 o'clock. So the buses are leaving when other employees are coming in, and the buses are coming in when employees are already there. So as far as creating a traffic backup or backlog or issues getting in and out, that's not the case at all. Really, the intersections having an east and west and having all the buses going out the west, employees coming in the east, makes it really pretty easy. This is no different than we did with FedEx. It's no different than we're talking about doing with the other trucking company. We honestly don't see any impact of traffic.
Has the town of Watertown looked at that intersection no, it's 202 on the other side, I forget what the road's called, but
At the mall entrance.
when you're taking a left, it's also straight, and that's a congestion, even with cars. Is the town of Watertown looking at trying to improve that?
There
Is
is
there a
a-
problem, more so, they've created
Well, it's
it?
a state highway,
Okay,
and there is a left turn arrow on that light.
okay.
Both directions, going to Brownville and coming back east to Watertown. So there is a left turn.
Well, it's a
for
left
buses.
turn, but having experienced it myself, traffic coming across 202 into the park has the right of way. So you tend to wait, the left turn and the straight are on the same lane. I don't know why the heck they did that.
Again, you gotta look at the timing. The buses are really going out
Okay.
when you don't have traffic coming in. So you don't have that potential. If the buses were all going out at the same time all the rest of the
Yeah.
employees were, then it'd be different. But it's really, they're staggered from peak times.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's relative to this project, you just know that if there's more, what I'll say, users in the park, that's something either the town or the state, hopefully they would take a good hard look at.
And Rob, when we go through the planning board process, the planning board looks at that. You know, they look at what are the trips, what are the routines, how many cars are coming in, and we evaluate that on every single project. Going back to the 80s with the car freshener projects. Same thing. Where's the trucks coming in, where's the employees coming in? That's looked at every project.
And as far as, I know the timing does make sense to me, and I know there's probably a couple, 2-3 shift operations there. Like Stature has a small one, I'm assuming Little Trees may work some off-shift work, FedEx may also start a little early, but as far as the rest of the park, there's not much going on before 7, is there?
Now, you've got your employees coming in for the early shifts. But again, they mostly come in the east driveway closest to 81.
Correct.
And the buses are all going out the other way. This was actually a bigger concern with FedEx when we were looking at the FedEx facility than anything else that we've looked at because of just the size of their fleet and what they were doing, especially in their peak times. And even with them being there, it hasn't posed a problem.
Mike, is this a business that they would look to grow down the road, or is this the size they're gonna stay at?
The building is designed for expansion, so it could expand. Lot 3 is right here, and it's owned by the IDA. And Lot 3 is, in all essence, impossible to build a building on. It's multiple terrace, the topography changes by probably 40 feet, and it's all rock. So to build a building on it would cost somebody an awful lot of money. It's ideal to be a parking lot, and when we had looked at building New York Meat across the street on lots 10 and 11, that was gonna be the staff parking lot. So if they ever did get to the point where they needed to expand, there's room for the building to expand, and potentially they could obtain that property there. Right now, they have the contract in Governor, Indian River, and now Watertown. They service their buses at Indian River and Governor out of Indian River and Governor. They use their existing facilities. So we've got room for 50 spaces the way that this is designed, and right now they have a total of 43, including the substandard buses and a couple Ford Transit vans. So they're not even at capacity of that parking lot. You know, there's 20% potential growth there without doing anything different.
The issues of traffic that were raised are something that has to be dealt with at the town at the planning board level through seeker, isn't it? Isn't that a seeker process, a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really a town issue, the traffic study needs to be done.
And they've already gone through that.
Yeah, they didn't feel that it warranted a traffic study. There wasn't enough traffic to
New
warrant.
York's a home rule state, we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, as long as the town planning board, they're first and foremost, we're behind them, I have no problem accepting their,
So as I read it, our real issue is, are we happy with the looks of the building? Joe?
That's pretty much it.
What color?
It's gonna be almost identical to the Penske building. Penske
I
building next
was
door.
hoping it wasn't that yellow.
No, we're not gonna make it
You
look
have
like a
a school
bus.
bus yellow in it.
It won't look like a
Pink
bus.
first student on it, make it look like a bus.
Their colors are blue and white, and they've actually asked me if I could do something on it. We were gonna match the Penske building, because, you know, they're all on one big parcel that I own. And we're working on the design. They've signed a letter of intent with me, and we're just finishing some documents, and we're working on the design. We're a couple weeks away from having that design.
But as far as the physical sort of, what I'll call appearance aside from color, it'll look like Stature Electric.
Look like Penske,
Okay,
probably,
more like Penske.
probably more than
Okay.
anything. Penske or a little bit like car freshener manufacturing facility. Paul, you brought up one point, not to get more airtime here, but one thing that really is different, and you need to consider when you do start talking about the airport park and the ag park, the covenants and restrictions are different than the zoning law criteria. So when you look at the corporate park being zoned neighborhood commercial, some of their setbacks and some of their percentages are different than the covenants and
I
restrictions.
think that's the reason we want to have the discussion, because you can go through, I think of needless bureaucracy, okay? You can go through the town zoning law. And when this first started, I had a long conversation with Don about, you know, most people have been comfortable with the town planning board's review of projects, okay? So you go through it, they do their due diligence, they approve a project with, let's say, a setback, and it doesn't meet ours, you gotta go back to them technically. And what I'm thinking is we need to work with the town board of Watertown as we develop it, and possibly I don't know whether Hounsfield will be involved. So we're all comfortable and if we're comfortable with the zone restrictions, and if we're going to create covenants, that they're consistent. And we also need to have a mechanism where you can vary I'd hate to put covenants in and then have New York Meat come in there and we're missing one little thing and all of a sudden we have a hassle.
Then you're dealing with variances and public perception.
That was the whole concept of covenants, is working together to make sure that we aren't way out of line with what the municipality's reviewing.
Something unique to think about for a minute though, and I've been involved with this a lot longer than maybe I look, but Dad built Statue Electric in 1977, and then I got involved in the early 80s. What did we not have in the 70s and 80s? We didn't have planning boards. So the covenants and restrictions that were started by the IDA for the industrial park in the 70s was because there was no planning board process. You went down to the local town clerk and you handed him $20, you got building permit. So the IDA's covenants and restrictions were kind of the guideline of how to build in the park. And then in the 80s, when Fort Drum came along and all these towns started going to planning boards. So you got to think about that these were created prior to the planning board process that we now deal with every day.
Well, I think a lot of people forget that we really have two parks. You have the original IDA park, which had its set of covenants. Then you have the land acquired from Dr. Minor, which is the park where we're talking about now, that has separate, their own deed covenants that only cover that chunk of the park. So really, there's two sets out there.
Yeah, and as development has grown since the revision in 2001 of everything west of Route 81, the covenants really haven't evolved with it.
Well, and we all know it takes everybody in the park to agree to make any changes to it, so that's probably not, this isn't the right time to have that discussion. But I think as we develop these other two parks, I agree with you that we need to work with the town to try to keep our covenants consistent with what the town's desires are where possible.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, some of their uses, like you could put a mobile home in under the town zoning in this district, that's the type of thing. We wouldn't want someone to come in there and buy a lot, and throw up 3 houses in there. Now, they never would, but under the zoning you could. So that's the type of thing.
That's why you see, based on the draft we have for the business complex at the airport right now, with Joe's input and kind of what lessons learned here, we're conforming as much as we can with existing town zoning, other than restricting some of the uses that they allow and making them a larger lot.
So this never really fell under like a planned development district?
No.
It's separate from that type of
And I need to tell you, a lot of this discussion got going because if you haven't read the town of Watertown's minutes, they listed your building as a 48,000 square foot building online in the minutes.
I heard that.
And when I saw that, I said, it's gonna be hard pressed to put that under administrative professional because, I have much less concerns now based upon the size of the building and what the uses are than I would have had if you had a 1 acre of roof over
Yeah,
there,
with
so.
4,800 feet.
Yeah.
They
Well,
added one
it's clearly,
space.
it's clearly a typo,
Changes, yeah.
but that raises
It's a
the
whole new
questions,
ballgame, yeah.
so. If our true role is to only as advised by council, to approve the building design, as I read the covenants it is, I have no problem. I hate to sit here, we can just ignore it and in 90 days it's de facto approved. And why would we do that? If no one has problems with the building design, I would move that we approve the design as submitted and not have that hanging out for 90 days. You're gonna build before 90 days, aren't you?
Yes.
The other issues are up for, as council advised us, for park owners to take whatever steps.
You have a right to enforce the covenants, but not an obligation. And you have a right to weigh in on whether this complies with the covenants, but not an obligation. So,
This would be the first project that we've ever enforced
Well,
covenants on. I mean,
the first
So-
one where we have lived up to the mandatory language that they submit the design elevations.
right.
Okay? I don't think it's a big deal to sit here and sit through and listen to the presentation and look at the design of the building. I mean, a lot of what attracts people to a park is probably the looks of the entire park, isn't it? You guys tell me, you've done it longer than I have. I think there's a lot of very attractive buildings in the park.
We're only looking at, is it characteristic of other buildings in the park?
there are no standards for your
And we
review of the
received-
building and the
and we
covenants. It's
received
basically
site
just
plan-
review.
We received
yeah.
plans. As far as all the other stuff,
Right.
that's all town of Watertown. It's home rule state.
Well,
We don't perform
to-
site plan reviews here. We
to-
don't do seeker.
Right, it's not the forum, in my opinion, it's not the forum to address those other portions of the covenants. If another property owner objects to his use or objects to
Correct.
the site, how he's got it laid out, and that it violates the restrictive covenants, it's certainly their right to object to that in the proper forum. It's not your obligation in this forum to do that.
Well, that goes through zoning regulations, not
Well-
through the IDA.
I mean, there's restrictive covenants that the IDA placed on the park, okay? And when the IDA owned most of the property there, it might have been appropriate and in your interest to make sure that, that the covenants were enforced. But now you've got, what, one lot, two lots? And you're talking now about, a property owner that has one of the lots and is proposing a use. There is a forum for the opposition to address this. I don't believe this is the forum where it should be addressed.
Okay. On Paul's motion,
Do we have a second?
What was your motion again?
that's what I,
To approve the design
Of the building.
elevations of the building.
I'll second.
any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries?
Dave, on the new business I do have, I don't know if you want to do the rest of the action, go into that at the end of the meeting, but I would like to ask the board to go into executive session to discuss for guidance on prospective sale of the property.
Okay.
If you want to do that now, or if you want to do it with Clayton first.
Do we have anything else first? Let's make sure that we're,
You got the Clayton Harbor Hotel.
oh, we got Clayton. Yeah, let's,
Yeah.
let's do that first.
The owners of the Clayton Harbor Hotel are in the process of constructing a very similar hotel in Chautauqua Lake. And as part of the financing for that new hotel, they're refinancing their 3 existing hotels and cross-collateralizing all of them into 4 separate loans. And the IDA has a leaseback on the Clayton Harbor Hotel and a pilot. And because of that, technically, we're entitled. The owners are asking us to enter into 4 new mortgages for the cross-collateralization on all the properties. I've reviewed the mortgages. They're consistent with the current mortgage that we've executed. And I see no reason why we shouldn't authorize it, and that's what the resolution's for.
New paper, same term, same.
Well, there's a lot more money involved, because they're cross-collateralizing all 4 into a big loan.
But from our
perspective,
view, it's the same.
It's the same, non-recourse as to the IDA.
And they're picking up your fees.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there'll be a portion mortgage tax when they do that.
Right, because they're they're not seeking mortgage tax exemption, so.
Even better.
On resolution number 0405, 2018-04, approving certain mortgages from Jefferson County Industrial Development Agency and Clayton Harbor Hotel LLC to Northwest Bank. I'd entertain a motion in a second.
I'll make a motion to accept as discussed and presented.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Dave,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Lisa. Yes. Paul.
Yes. I did that.
Resolution carries. Thank you.
The resolution should carry.
Anything else before?
Well, I think I'll just ask the board if we could go into executive session, as I said, for the purpose of discussing negotiation on prospective sale of real property.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Go ahead.
Okay, no, doesn't matter.
Please let the notes show that we invited staff to stay with us.
Staff and council.
Be in touch. Get that roof done.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Jeez, thank you, too.
Rob, Ed, oh, I got one for John.
You know, we just watched them up to take on. What's the statute of limitation? I know it's 30 days from